Wurl's GM of EMEA, Keith Bradford, joins us this week explaining why fasts have a big opportunity in streaming sports and some of the early success stories. Listen on.
Welcome to this week's edition of Inside the Stream. This is Will Richmond from Video News, and Colin Dixon from In-Screen Media is with me. Colin, how is everything for you?
It's great, Will, and I'm happy to report that we have got the interview with Keith Bedford from Wurl coming up. We teased that a couple of weeks ago. We've been having some scheduling problems, but we finally got that interview for you. So we'll be talking a lot about fasts and sports in today's podcast. But before we get there, we've got a couple of news stories, and I just wanted to share with you something that really amused me, that let me know that AI and Gen AI is really here. I was watching an episode of High Potential on Hulu, and we'll be getting to Hulu in a second. And one of the characters in this turns and says, "Oh, I'm going to use Microsoft Copilot to process this data to get a summary," or some such nonsense. And that both my wife and I turned and looked at each other and started laughing. And I shouted, "No, use Claude." But I guess that really shows that Gen AI has arrived, right? It's even in mainstream media like that.
Exactly. And did the character then proceed to use Copilot and say, "Oh no, this didn't work. What should I really use?" And then her character channeled you and said, "Use Claude."
No, it didn't happen. Obviously, this was some sort of paid promotion by Microsoft in this show, but shows where we're at, right?
Well, and then the next commercial break came up, and it was an ad for Microsoft.
It could well be.
So. Well, let's go ahead and get started. We have a couple of quick news stories before we get into the interview with Keith. You have the first one. Yeah,
I mentioned Hulu, and things are changing at Hulu. And there was a story in the Wall Street Journal about Disney under Josh D'Amaro, who's the new CEO, is going to be making some layoffs. And in that story was the fact that they're going to be combining the Hulu and Disney Plus teams. And this continues the evolution of Hulu and Disney Plus. It really looks like Disney is really removing Hulu as a separate standalone product. You can still subscribe to Hulu on its own. We checked, but it is getting increasingly buried. They also announced that the only way you can add Hulu as an add-on now is via Disney Plus. You can't add Disney Plus as an add-on to Hulu. You can only add it as an add-on to Disney Plus. And as I said, it's getting increasingly hard to even find the option to subscribe to Hulu as a standalone product. So I don't know, is this a good use of the Hulu brand, which they spent $9 billion on, Will? What do you think?
Well, right, that $9 billion was questionable from the beginning. But I think it makes sense from Disney's standpoint to try to streamline things. We know that Disney has all kinds of challenges ahead of it. ESPN, of course, the big one. So being able to consolidate brands, the brands that they're offering, and make things cleaner for consumers, consumer choice, that seems valuable. So, I don't know, kind of to be expected, don't you think?
I guess it is, Will. I guess it is. But anyway, I think we have one other story.
Yeah, just another branding story. Not a huge thing, but also just a sign of the times. We're looking at the news that AMC Networks rebranded itself as AMC Global Media. And they had actually announced back in, a couple months ago, that streaming revenue was their top source of domestic revenue for the first time. And so the company that was known as AMC Networks, that of course had TV networks like AMC, which have been around for ages, other ones like BBC America, IFC, Sundance TV, etc., still key to the company's performance. But the streaming services that it offers, including AMC Plus, Acorn TV, Shudder, Sundance Now, etc., combined to contribute the most revenue to its domestic business in Q4, and they are updating their branding now to reflect the diminished importance of TV networks. So kind of sign of the times, right?
It certainly is, Will, and I continue to see the stories of cable channels shutting down and reorgs favouring streaming. So as you say, a sign of the times.
So let's go ahead then and move on to our interview with Keith.
And I'm delighted to welcome Keith Bedford, who's GM EMEA at AppLovin's Wurl, or was it Wurl, at a division of AppLovin? Welcome, Keith.
Yes, good to meet you both. Looking forward to the podcast.
Good to meet you, Keith.
So, Keith, why don't you start off first? And many of our listeners have heard about Wurl, but just remind us what Wurl is and how it works with the FAST market.
Yes, well, Wurl have been in the streaming market for a number of years and were one of the first providers to launch a FAST channel on Samsung in the US. So really, we sit in a unique position working for content companies and advertisers and platforms. So our main focus is building channels, which is how we started the business. So we work with lots of big channel brands in the marketplace like AMC, A&E, helping take their content, build their channels, schedule it and distribute it to many different areas of the FAST network, including Samsung, Roku, LG, Vizio, just to name a few, over 60 streamers. And as part of that, we also offer them the advertising potential. So we're putting ad breaks in for them, but we're also helping monetize their content by providing ads into their streams, which helps not just monetize them as a channel, but also helps monetize the platforms like the Vizios and the Samsungs and the LGs. So as I say, we're in a good position. We sit in a unique place where we work with both the content companies, the streaming companies, and the networks. So it's a good 360-degree view of how streaming television works, and we're part of every angle of that. So it's good to be in that position.
Thanks, Keith. That's a great overview. Appreciate it. So let's dive in a little bit further. Maybe you could share a quick overview of how the FAST market has changed over the last year or so, from Wurl's perspective, from your perspective, and also any data that you might have on viewing hours, session length, time of day usage, genres that are most popular, etc.
Yes, no problem. Starting with the genres, I think. I mean, certainly we see, if I look back to where FAST has come from, in those early days, they were archive channels, people with content sitting in their content buckets looking for places to make some extra revenue. So that's how streaming on FAST actually started. But it's really grown from there. And I think when you see the sort of, especially in the US, you have this cord cutting thing that we sort of don't really have going on in Europe. It's at a much slower place, I would say. But that has changed the shape of the market. So your subscription levels have dropped and your free-to-air television's gone up. So what we've seen there is, original archive content turning into more sort of entertainment content. The streaming hours on news is very high. And that really does dominate the market right now. It's entertainment and news. But one of the things we are talking about today is sports. And we're seeing, sports beginning to grow on streaming. And I think if I look at some figures, only 2.7% of live is going out on FAST right now, as opposed to 19% in linear. So there's still a big linear presence in live. And I think if we talk about the opportunity in live, live is massive, and everybody sits around the TV to watch live events. That is really a big pool still for lots of linear and streaming television. So the battle is on, if you like, around who's going to buy the rights, is it going to be streaming rights, is it going to be linear rights. So I think FAST sits in that ecosystem and is beginning to grow. But there's a lot that can happen in this industry yet, and obviously we'll talk later about the advertising models, which are completely different from linear to streaming to FAST.
So I can only really think of one premium event that was carried by FAST's that was drove a really huge audience, and that, of course, was the Super Bowl, which was put on via Tubi from Fox, and was a big success, very impressive performance. Am I right that's really the only major? That's the most major sport that we've seen. So,
well,
what's
are we
driving
talking US or the world? I mean, it's the most major sport in the US, and obviously that is a world.
Yeah.
But I think from viewing figures right now, probably yes, that is. But then when I look at all of the channels that we're launching on Fast throughout the world, FIFA is one of those. The Federation for Football, they were streaming live women's football during the Women's World Cup. They've got lots of live events coming up. World Rugby actually streamed the Lions tour in the US. And surprisingly, there's over 800 rugby clubs, if you didn't know, in the US, which was a stat that I was quite surprised about myself. But
it's a very popular sport here.
Well, it is, and it's very popular here. And I was very pleased to launch that channel. It was a favourite of mine, being a big rugby fan. So, but yeah, no, I agree. I think the big sports right now are dominating, and it's where the money is right now. The linear money still on live event sport, but I think what we're seeing is, if you take sports across the network, obviously the big events are going to get the money, and that's either going to be the big streamers or still linear. But when I look at all the different other sports there are that are losing money through this cord cutting exercise, the rights aren't holding the same sort of value. If you go down the food chain, where you've got the big sports, you're going to generate that revenue. But there's still some very, very good sports out there that aren't getting that revenue from the major networks, that are looking at other opportunities, and Fast is one of those.
So when you think about the opportunity for Fast with sports, how do you think that they should move to take advantage of sports? Where's the play? Is it in the kind of the smaller sports that you just mentioned?
Well, I think actually a combination of both. I think everybody has got a direct-to-consumer strategy these days, including the NFL. The NFL, are still trying to sell services direct to the consumer. So the reality of the world is we live in a multi-platform world. So, one service isn't going to fit all right now. You have to engage with, consumers across many platforms, whether that's, pay TV still, whether that's YouTube, whether that's social media, whether that's Fast, whether that's streaming. And most sports, big brands out there have got a strategy to try and engage the consumer in different ways. There is always going to be a drive to that live game, but there's 365 days a year, and there's a certain amount of live sports, and it's all about trying to engage your fan now. So you've got to have a strategy for a multi-platform approach. Certainly Fast is up there. A lot of the platforms have set it as a strategy to get as many sports channels onto their platforms, like the Samsungs, the LGs in Europe, and the Vizios and Tubis in the US. That is a big, they know live is going to generate viewership. So they're all trying to get that. And the other side is everybody's got to have a multi-platform approach. There isn't, I don't think there's an easy fix in this world we live in right now. I think it's multi-platform. I think you're going to go where the viewerships and the hours of viewing are going, but you also want to try and see if you can keep that fan engaged across multi-platform and drive them to that live event. So Fast can definitely play a role in that. And I know that MSG Sports in the US are showing shoulder content right up to the live game. So, they are taking an opportunity to say, here's the live interviews before the game starts, and then it will obviously switch to a subscription. So there are different methods to engage the people out there. And I know a number of sports channels that are launching, they're going to go live during the whole match, but they can't actually show the match because there's certain restrictions even on timings when you can actually view live sport in the UK, for instance. You're not allowed to watch a live football game in the UK at 3 p.m. I mean, it's been a rule that's been around for, I don't know, forever, really. And it was there to try and engage people to go to the actual match. But, we're way beyond that. There's so many more potential viewers. So they are looking at what type of content they can show during match day to keep the fan engaged without showing them the live game. So there's lots of opportunities out there.
So it sounds like for premium sports, it's the opportunity is more around shoulder content, pre-game, post-game shows, that type of thing. Talk about the opportunity for smaller sports. You mentioned rugby. Rugby's a good one. I don't think you would call that a premium sport, certainly not in the US. But there are a ton of others. Like there's netball, rounders. There's a whole bunch of other types of sports. How can they take advantage of fast?
Well, sure. I mean, the best thing is to give you an example of FIFA. I mean, what they've done is, they have the biggest games. The Men's World Cup will go to a bid, and the highest bidders will take that content in each country. But there are still lots of countries that don't bid for that content, and then there's a mixture between, okay, we have some live content available, which we can stream for free and see where we can make some ad money. There's also about brand reach. There's lots of opportunities to get to different countries to show that brand. But certainly what FIFA have done is they've used, where they didn't sell the rights in two territories for the Women's World Cup, for instance, there's Brazil and Italy, they showed those games live for free on Fast. So where you're not selling your rights across different territories, you've got the opportunity to show them on Fast and make some streaming revenue. So that's an example of how they're using Fast to selling not territories that they haven't sold rights to. They're also showing lots of other games, and that could be under 21s tournaments and things like that. So there's lots of content that they can still show. And in some places FIFA is a massive brand, but you don't associate it with going to watch a football game. You go to your local network, or you go to Sky in the UK. So in a way, there's a bit of an exercise going on about brand, and FIFA are using that as a good brand reach to make sure fans know FIFA you can see content there. So it's a mixture.
So Keith, let's just talk a little bit more about the fast opportunity in sports. One of obviously the real appeals to viewers is that fasts are free, and at the same time, we know that sports rights are expensive, and especially for marquee sports, and seem like they're only getting more expensive. So can you just help us understand a little bit, like with the absence of fees that subscription streaming services generate, is the fast model, do you think, compatible with eventually obtaining more sports rights among kind of marquee sports, would you say?
Well, I think that's an excellent question. I think there's quite a way to go yet. But I think the difference right now is that linear broadcasting has dealt with live sports for so many years. It is also very expensive, by the way. So, having a live team watching that game, going to the ad break, making sure it ends at the right time, making sure the ad slots are pre-sold. So, there is a long way to go on the advertising model for sports. So currently there's a lot of the live broadcast units that have pre-sold their games, they pre-sold their advertising. There's huge teams involved in pressing that button. The fast is beginning to catch up, and definitely for Wurl we are putting a lot of technology in there because it runs on real-time bidding. So you have to know the live events on to get the maximum amount of that CPM that you're selling. So currently there is unlimited ways to do this, and it's sort of a lot of manual work, believe it or not, in streaming. But we are looking at how we can place live event markers in the bid stream, which will then change the fact that you can know this event's coming up, you can pre-plan it with your ad agencies and campaigns to look at maximum CPMs, and on the live event date you can actually get a trigger to say this is a live event, now bid on that event. So there is technology there that we're working on to try and increase the value of that live event. But currently that is slightly behind the curve, but we're certainly working on technology to do it. And I think the thing is, because there's more events coming up, we are building event calendars now, and we're sending that out to the agencies to say, there's lots of live coming up on this platform that you didn't actually know about. So there's a big education process needed, not just for the agencies, the brands, but also the DSPs that are placing the ads. So that's something that we're working on, trying to put the glue together to make that happen, to generate higher CPM levels. So and that's only going to get better with HOV. So it's a bit of a round question in a way. So we need higher HOVs, which is going to come from the better content. Once we got that, we can place the higher values on those CPMs, and we can get better ads in there. So it's a process that's happening, and it will only get bigger.
And just a reminder, HOV stands for hours of viewing, so that's a standard metric in the fast world. So you actually, this is an interesting question, Keith, and I'm wondering, can the ad decisioning system keep up with, say, an injury break? Can I sell an ad? Can an ad be sold into an injury break in a fast system?
Yes, that's a very good question, and there's two methods we're looking at doing that. One, we are actually offering a live button, if you like. So there is a channel we launched at the moment where we hard code the ads, so the ads only come on at a certain period during half time. But there is a method now where we can press a live button, we can put a live ad in that time in the programmatic bid stream. But we are working with other functionality. We work with a company called Transmit that are putting in picture L-bar and live. And interesting enough, I know that's something that happens in the US quite a lot. In Europe, we are a little bit behind that. And I'm just going to refer to rugby again, apologies, but we put a live ad in an injury time in the rugby in the Six Nations. There was an outcry from the fans, but it has to be a mixture. That was a free-to-air event on ITV. They have to make their ad revenue, so eventually these things will catch up. But there is technology there, and it will be able to catch up, and be even better, I should think, because obviously the difference between linear and streaming is there is more data available. Yeah. So one of the things that we will have is we will be able to see how many concurrent views there were, how many people were watching that stream, in what areas, what was their demographic, what was their geolocation. That's only going to give us more information to target those viewers at future events. So the difference is we're going to get a lot more data when all these things are working and everybody's talking. And I think that's only a matter of time, not when.
So Keith, as you look forward in this area of fast and sports, are there any sort of key milestones that you're looking at in terms of the development of this market? Anything that the rest of us might also keep an eye out for?
Well, I think it's hard to put a milestone in, really. I think the key metrics that we're looking at as a business is, what sports brands want to launch on streaming. So that's obviously a target for us, and we are targeting lots of companies that want to do that. The next one is the platforms need to take those on. So the likes of the Samsungs and the LGs and the Visios, the Plexes, they're going to be having more and more live channels, so that will grow. So I think there's a sort of natural progression of growth. I don't think there's any quick wins in this, in any TV world right now, to be honest, and especially in sports. But as I said, we can certainly see the appetite for this growing. We can see the hours of viewing growing. Recently, Samsung did a launch with the Bundesliga, which is the German Premier League. They launched on Samsung UK with 5 games, and their hours of viewing have been really, really good. So there's definitely an appetite for it, and Bundesliga are also very good at marketing that out to their other platforms and social networks. So as I said, there is no key milestone. Everybody's got to look at how they can engage with the fan on what platform, and it has to be every platform. I don't think there's a single brand out there that shouldn't be looking at how they do a multi-platform approach to trying to engage the fan. So key milestones for any company is my yearly P&L, but apart from that.
Now, you have a new programming guide. So tell us, what is that? Who's it for? And when's it going to launch?
Everything I've talked about today is for somebody launching a fast channel is a minefield, to be honest. There are so many things that you need to do as a business to launch and to make money. So I think we're trying to make a simple guide to say, this is how you can launch a channel. These are the platforms that are performing. This is the content that's performing well. These are the metrics you should really be looking at to, make sure that your channel is not just doing well on audience and viewership, but the amount of revenue you can get in it. So I think, as we said earlier, there's lots of acronyms. There's lots of, it is, compared to my linear days of broadcasting channels, that was so easy in comparison to launching a digital channel. But I would say the costs are a lot less. The distribution is a lot higher, and it's a lot cheaper to get your content out there. So I think just making an easy to market plan is what everybody needs.
Well, Keith, this was great. We appreciate your time. Any closing thoughts that you would leave our audience with?
Well, I think my main thought is that, the fan is there 365 days of the year. And I think the engagement level of that has changed in so many ways. So I think looking at how you engage with that fan, not just on a live day, but on outside of match day content is key. Engaging that fan to get to that live event is key as well. So I think you've got to use so many different platforms, but fast is definitely something that we see growing.
Indeed. And that's something that I actually see in the US market. I see as an opportunity for teams in the US market. As you know, we've had some problems with the sports channels on pay TV systems collapsing. And the teams are now going direct. But generally they're not using fast. So if you've got a team in the US, you might want to take a look at how you can leverage fast with maybe some shoulder content to engage new fans. But this has been a fascinating conversation, Keith. Thank you so much for spending time with us.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to come on the podcast. It was great. Thank you.
Thanks, Keith.
Inside the Stream is a production of In-Screen Media and Video News, all rights reserved.